everyone. Welcome to another Make Happiness podcast. I believe we're on episode 8 now. I brought in another guest, and this week we have this is a longtime friend, and I've known him for probably about 8 years now. It's been a while. I mean, you want to introduce yourself, Danny?
Yeah, I can introduce myself. Danny Konopaski. I'm another local Bloomington guy. I learned a lot of things about happiness from this man, Ian Price, over here. Thanks for having me on your show, man. I'm a big supporter.
Of course. I appreciate you coming on. I thought it'd be really cool to interview someone who I've known for a long time and someone who's kind of, you're doing your own thing with your own passion, following your own dream and doing what you want to do. So I thought it'd be a perfect fit.
Yeah, man. I'm happy to be here. I'm excited to get started.
All right. Well, let's hear a little bit more about yourself, with some background stuff. I know you just said you're from Bloomington, but what'd you study? What are you doing? That kind of thing.
Sure. Yeah. Like I said, I grew up right here in Bloomington. I've got one older brother, and we were both raised by my mom. Mm-hmm. When somebody asks me to tell them about myself, if they know Justin, they probably already know the other half of me. So
that's fair.
But yeah, I'm a big family guy, so I spend a lot of time with my family.
Sure.
That's number one to me. But I'm also, I like to pride myself on being an individual, following my own passion, my own ambitions,
mm-hmm.
and
which I know you've done a lot.
have, and I'd like to keep it going. There's a lot this world has, and there's a lot more that we could give it, and there's a lot more that we can get from it.
Right. Which is awesome.
Yeah, I was just gonna say it's important to stay being a student. You might,
mm-hmm.
In school I studied economics, but
okay.
What I learned from economics is that we can always learn more from everything else. And economics being the study of how people work and just rationalism. The world's not exactly rational most of the time. We're pretty much more emotional, if you ask me. And
that's a good statement. I like that.
Yeah, it's ever changing, and it's important for us to stay open-minded. Otherwise, I'm not really sure what we can accomplish.
When you were going to school was that your plan kind of along? You wanted to go into econ and do that? What did you want to do?
I had no idea, and that's kind of the funny thing, because I look at where I am today compared to 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah. What are you doing now?
3 years ago. Today I work on an investment team at Merrill Lynch, and
okay.
I'm kind of following my passion of understanding the financial markets. And one thing that I hope to take this someday is to start kind of a foundation for teaching students before they turn 18 things like investing, financial planning, because I think I'll get probably off on a tangent here about our education system if you let me, but
we've had a couple of those already, so
I'm sure. Well, I just think it's important to know these things, and it's not in classes right now, and if it is, it's an elective, and a lot of people don't know how to take it. So at the very least, I think doing classes or something. In the future, I'd like to do something where I can introduce these principles to people at a young age, where if they start on the right path from the day they turned 18, you can truly follow your passion instead of just following money.
Yeah, I like that. And so they're more, set, and they have a more understanding about investing and how to manage their money. And
yeah, and I think that's, I think it's true. If you do something you love, you don't work a day in your life, but at the same time, if you're following your passion, you might not make the money that you need to make in order to live the life you want. People want to be teachers, and we need teachers, but we don't exactly pay our teachers enough for them to, want to be teacher. People go to school to become engineers, doctors, lawyers, it's things like that because they're following the money. Yeah, that's their passion for a lot of them too, but if you start off with, the day you're 18, you're working a side job or something, you start building up these funds, planning for your everyday life, you can be a teacher and retire with $1 million. You can make those dreams happen.
Right.
And that's going to lead to a lot less people looking for jobs because they think they have to make money, and people that are satisfied with, everyday jobs that we need. Mm-hmm. You can do that strong and successfully.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point, and I think that we need to have more of that in our education system. But I wanted to backtrack a little bit to talk about when you mentioned, what did you vision yourself doing before you are now with investing and all that? Did you see yourself doing that, or what did you see yourself doing?
Yeah, so I grew up working at a country club here in Bloomington, Minnesota Valley, and
represent,
shout out. Maybe I'll get a free membership out of this. But I started off just caddying there. I was 12 years old. My brother was 13 at the time.
Is golfing a big passion then?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
And I think, that's a totally different story there, but I guess starting working that young, you learn work ethic right off the bat.
I mean, yeah, no doubt.
You're 12, 13 years old, and
Mm-hmm.
you're carrying a bag that's the same size as you. Your golfer doesn't exactly appreciate it because, well, you're not the best caddy when you're 12, 13.
Right.
But, you make a decent chunk of change. You get cash right off the bat, and then
I suppose
a couple years later, you know exactly how to play the course, and people start
Mm-hmm.
appreciating that. But that, it teaches you expertise at a very small level, but at the same time, like I said, it's the work ethic.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. I know when I started, too, I had a paper route when I was like 12, 13, too. So I know the same thing. Like, you had to wrap them up, put them in bags, and they had to go out every Thursday. And
I did the same thing, and I wouldn't have done it without my mother, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, me too.
Some days you don't want to wake up, and then your mom ends up driving you around. You're throwing papers out the window, but you just claim it. No, I did that. But
see, I always got yelled at for biking through yards because I would just ride my bike across the neighborhood and I would just ride through everyone's yard. So I'd leave tire marks like through the grass and through their flowers and stuff.
What do you expect? Just trying to make a living out here. But I guess, so I worked throughout high school, and then going into college, I guess coming out of high school, money was never, I never had a lot of money growing up. We weren't an affluent family by any stretch. Like I said, it was 2 brothers, 1 mother, and she provided as best as she could. But, it's not like we can just write our own check to go to a private school right out of high school or anything like that.
Yeah.
Not to mention, I didn't know what I wanted to do. Justin, my brother, wanted to do some sort of engineering, and I'm like, oh, that sounds good. I like math. I like building things. So maybe I'll do that. So that was my initial thought. And I went to Normandale Community College here.
Sure.
Actually ended up being part of their Academy of Math and Science. Which,
oh, really?
Yeah, that helped me pay for the classes that I wanted to take, and also kind of helped me develop what I wanted to go to school for.
Okay.
And kind of had that reverse effect, because as I'm thinking I want to go for engineering or maybe even be a math teacher, I thought about, turns out you have to go to like Calculus 6.
Wow.
Which sounds fun and all, but I decided against it.
That sounds horrible. I would never do that.
Horrible. But the classes that I really enjoyed were, you have to take economics in the first 2 years or so of school.
Right.
And we had a class like economics in high school, but it wasn't nearly to this level, and it really intrigued me.
Yeah, it wasn't as in-depth or anything.
Yeah. And I liked it because it was kind of, you're studying how people work versus just, how to crunch numbers. Not that that's a bad skill to have, obviously, but I just mean, I'm more intrigued on why the world works the way it works versus just being another part of it.
Which is a cool thing. That's why I thought this podcast would be really good, because I know you and me have a lot of the same or similar mindsets and thought process.
Yeah, and you got to know these things. I mean, how the world reacts to certain types of things. It's just it helps you game plan more, because if you want to make some kind of a change or a difference, you have to know what the externalities are going to be of that.
Was there a certain point when you kind of had that realization of oh, wow, I'm kind of aware of all of these things going on, or I'm paying attention to all these things happening, or you know what I mean? I'm more focused and I'm aware of what's going on around me?
Yeah, I think so, and I think a lot of that came from, so I guess I didn't finish my college route. I went to Normandale, then I ended up transferring over to St. Thomas and finishing up school there, but they give you a great transfer scholarship and everything like that. But I think one of the things that I loved the most about economics and just learning about how things worked is you learn it from people. You don't need to learn it from a teacher. You can I mean, everything's applicable. When you're starting to talk to somebody, whether you're trading Pokemon cards when you're 8 years old or stuff like that, I mean, it's literally learning how to trade, learning fair value of things.
Right.
And just, like I said, people are emotional more than they are rational. You make emotional decisions every day, whether you're ordering something off of a food menu or you're, selling a vehicle, a Jeep, for instance, or just your house. I mean, I learned this from my realtor the other day. It's like, if you want to put in an offer at a house, write a personal note to the seller, and they're more likely to choose you because they're looking at that. They're like, okay, depending on what the story is, if you got a good sappy story, or whether it is or not, if it's just true,
it's more relatable, and it's
and somebody selling a house for $200,000 isn't going to care if you're a couple grand short, but if they like you, they're going to feel better about that. And it's just that's the other side of economics. That's behavioral economics,
the emotional stuff that you were mentioning earlier.
Exactly. And I think that drives our economy so much more than we give it credit for.
Okay.
And it's funny to see that, especially at a bare level where all of us are today, when we just see our friends, we see our families, we see our families' friends.
Yeah.
And just how people operate. It's a lot different. I mean, like I said, teachers can't teach everything.
No.
I mean, there's a million things you can learn from somebody, but there's a million more things you can learn from observing the world around you.
Yeah, and there's one quote I remember. I don't know where I saw it, but it was interesting how if a student has to learn 6 subjects, but a teacher can't teach 6 subjects, which is interesting, and they expect a student to learn all of those.
A rock and a hard place.
Yeah.
You know?
So I want to move on a little bit and talk about what does happiness and self-fulfillment kind of mean to you? You know, like where do you find that? Where do you get that from out of your life?
Man, I mean, those two things are everything, right? Depending on your view of it, right? I mean, I guess I look at happiness and I think about it as...
What's the first thing comes to mind?
I mean, it's family, right? I mean, it's your connections to the rest of the world. And I mean, even if you don't have a big family, I have, 2 other members of my family, my mom and my brother.
Sure.
But it's more than that. I mean, it's like your friends become your family. Your friends' family becomes your family. Those are all the lives that you touch through your day-to-day decisions. And it's like that. It's happiness.
That human connection.
Yeah, happiness isn't about your own happiness. It's about how much happiness are you providing the world.
Okay.
And how can you give somebody else something like that? I mean, that's the best gift in the world, right? And I think that runs back to self-fulfillment. I've been through a million of these debates. I feel like in philosophy classes in school where it's like, okay, well, people are nice to other people because it makes them feel good. Isn't that, we are inherently selfish?
Yeah, we touched on that in a couple of podcasts prior.
Yeah, I mean, I
crazy.
think it's an interesting thought, but I just shut that down because I feel like there's a deeper meaning, right? I mean, why does it make us feel good? We don't do it to feel good. We do it and we do feel good.
Yeah.
And why is that? I don't know the answer. That's just, maybe it's in our DNA.
Right.
But it's not a it's not a self-action. It's not an act of selfishness. It's just, this is what happens. Because I'm doing something good, somebody else is happy about it.
Sure.
I do feel good, but that's not why I do it. It's just...
I got a question. So let's say you're holding the door open for someone. If you do that like every day for your entire life, when you're in your 40s, you're not going to get that same good feeling as you would when you did it when you were 19, 18, because you've been doing it for like 20 years,
Maybe not. I mean, you're holding the door for different people, right?
Okay, that's a fair point.
It's like I hold the door open for somebody every single day. Every day I go into work, and, if you go to work at the same time as most people,
there's someone else walking
somebody's walking through the door with you.
Yeah.
And you hold the door. It gives you a reason to start a conversation with somebody. I mean, especially in the morning, people don't want to talk. Well,
Some people do. Yeah.
But they don't have the energy to go out of their way to say hi to somebody, nor should they necessarily. I mean, sometimes if I'm having a rough morning, I don't necessarily want to have a conversation either. But
right.
For somebody else to hold the door for me, I say thank you every time. And you smile. They feel better about their day. And that's that's starting your day off on the right side of the bed, right?
Sure.
Whether you're opening it for somebody else and they smile or vice versa.
Yeah, no doubt. That was actually, I talked about, it's funny that you mentioned smiling, because my last blog last week, I talked about how, smiling is really contagious. If you're in a room and you start smiling or you're laughing with a buddy or whatever, other people around you are just going to subconsciously start smiling and feel that same feeling.
Absolutely. Especially if it's natural, You're out there, you're happy. People love that.
It's a really weird thing to comprehend, because I don't know why that happens, but it's just, people around you, it's contagious.
People want to be happy. I mean, there's no reason not to. I can't think of a single person that doesn't want to be happy, unless you got to be. I don't see it. I mean, I think there's hope for everybody.
Right.
And if you want to be happy, there is a way to become happy or to increase your happiness, and maybe that is sharing it with somebody else.
Well, how do you find happiness when, there's it's a negative situation, or you're having that rough day in the morning, you don't want to talk to anyone?
Yeah.
How do you get that happiness, and how do you find that positivity?
I mean, that's the golden question, right? And it's a different answer for everybody you talk to, I guess.
That's true, but I'm curious what yours is.
Sure. God, I've been through a few heartaches of my own through life.
Definitely.
I think it's important to not sweat the little things, and sometimes you just got to think about the world. It's all little things. I mean,
yeah. Terrible
things happen, but nobody is in a unique situation. I mean, if something's happened to you, it's happened to somebody else.
Yeah, that's a good statement. I like that.
Yeah, and I just think, people can feel alone if they get into a bad situation.
Oh, yeah.
And that can really hurt their self-confidence or hurt where they go from there. And I think if you kind of look at the world from a broader stance and think, you know what, I'm not unique in this situation. Somebody else is going through this too or something else. You can kind of, not to say brush it off, but you can use it and build off of it and say, okay, what am I going to do from here? I mean, everybody gets knocked down.
Oh, yeah, no doubt.
Get back up and kind of find pride in that. And I think that's, to answer your question, the thing that makes me happy is, you know, other people, it's the little things, like from a positivity standpoint, somebody smiles at me randomly. I'm going to wonder why. I'm going to think it's funny, if anything, but
yeah. Which I've done that to you multiple times.
And how's it going? Best day of my life. Really? Best day? Yeah, I thought yesterday was the best day.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's the little things, you put them together and you don't sweat the other little things that don't go great. I mean, like I said, bad days happen, good days happen too.
Yep.
And use the bad days to strengthen yourself, move forward, and then feel good about doing that.
Yeah.
It's an accomplishment. It's like make your bed in the morning, first thing you do. They say to start your day off with a little accomplishment.
Oh, yeah.
It's an accomplishment to fight through adversity at the same point. Like if whatever's going on in your life, you fight through it, you feel good about fighting through it.
Exactly. And then when you get to the end of it, or you feel like you're finally, you know, past that dark moment, you have a
self-fulfillment.
Yeah. It's crazy.
It is crazy.
But the hard part is trying to get to that point, because sometimes, like, if you not even digging yourself, but if you fall into a hole, it's sometimes you can't see that side of it because you're so engulfed in what's going on that you can't look at that side of it's okay, it's going to get better, because you're just stuck.
Yeah, you need to have support, right? I mean,
yeah, that's true.
You can't do anything in this world alone. I'm a firm believer in that, no matter what. If you're, you can't be selfish and expect to seriously have success. People look at success in a different way, but to me, if I'm going to define success, I'm talking about happiness. Yeah, money is important. I mean, you can't avoid that.
Yeah.
People want to make a decent living,
right,
and be able to provide things for themselves and their families. But at the bottom line, I mean, you want to have a family, you want to have friends, you want to be
you want to have a good life,
right?
Yeah.
And I think that's what defines success. How do you get there? You have to be comfortable in your own skin. You have to be who you are, and you're going to naturally connect with people that are either similar or maybe very different. And that's kind of the interesting part, right? You don't have to be anything like somebody else to be friends with them.
Oh, yeah, totally.
And that's kind of, if you have mutual respect for somebody, I mean, you completely opposite views politically, really. I mean, you talk about the main things people aren't supposed to talk about, that's fine. But if you kind of respect somebody as a person, you don't get caught up in that. Like I said, it's just a little thing.
Yeah. That's really cool. I like that a lot, because I was in my last blog too, I touched on that, kind of being yourself and not caring what other people think of you, being comfortable in your own skin, which is awesome that you kind of brought that up.
Yeah, dude.
But so moving on to another question, I want to touch on, you know, how do you go back to talking about making money and starting a family and all that stuff. How do you balance those between, you know, your work life, your hobbies, like playing golf, you know, hanging out with your girlfriend, hanging out with your wife, whatever the case may be? How do you find, how do you prioritize everything so you have a balance?
That's another tough question, dude.
Do you think you're doing that, or are you struggling with that, or, you know,
I think everybody struggles with that. I mean, I think if you got that down to a T, then geez, props for you, because I don't know how you did it, but I don't think that's normal. I think it's normal to struggle with that, because
you think it's normal to have an imbalance of that?
Absolutely. And I almost think it might be a good thing, because I think that, I mean, if everything is so structured in your life where you're like, you know, from
scheduled,
6 to 9, I'm at the gym, from 9 to 5, I'm at work, from 5 to 10, I'm with my family, and I sleep in between. It's like, okay, what happens when you get a day off? I mean, what do you plan for? I guess I like to live my life spontaneously. I mean, you need structure, of course.
Yeah.
But I think, I mean, it's fun when you get surprised by something. Like, I think surprises are awesome. You know, it's like, whatever the case may be, I try and mix my day up, you know, even from where I park in the morning. I try and park somewhere different every day. You stay sharp that way.
I like that.
You don't develop patterns, and I kind of like the idea of not necessarily developing a pattern for certain things.
Do you have any daily routines that you do are like very strict on, or anything in the morning that you have to do, or that, you know, you kind of like have set in a schedule?
You got to brush your teeth every morning.
That's a good one for a start.
No, I guess I do try and, you know what? I try and do make your bed every morning. On weekends, I tend to slack, but I think...
I mean, everyone has those days.
Yeah, but during the week, though, I do think it's nice. I mean, you wake up in the morning, you just... I love it when the sun's out. The winter time, when there's no sun, it's tougher to wake up, I think.
Okay.
But in the morning, sunshine this time of year, I mean, it's like I feel great. Wake up, you make your bed, you do feel good about doing something like that. You brush your teeth.
Get the coffee going or whatever.
Yeah, and I drink the office coffee, and
Hey, that's fair. It's free.
It's free, and it does the same thing.
Yeah.
But my routine, yeah, like I don't stick to anything specific. I try and do a lot of things in my day, and I think if your day's not hectic, then you probably didn't have enough things going on. But yeah,
that's an interesting answer. I feel that's a good one. I like that.
If there's, everybody says, if there's more time in the day, you can make more time in most days, but sometimes rest is important. It's very important to get.
I was gonna say, do you
sleep.
or do you just sit and relax, or do you ever just do nothing? Do you think it's good to have those times as well?
I try and schedule out time to do nothing.
Well, I thought you don't like scheduling,
but it's
man.
like meditation, man. I mean, I think that it's like I've never gone to a meditation class. I would love to. My girlfriend has gone and she's invited me, but I haven't made the time to do it. But I think mental health is so important, and especially at this time in life, a lot of people are doing jobs that maybe they don't want to do for the rest of their life, but they need the paycheck right now.
Yep.
And if you're stressed out doing something that maybe you don't love yet too, it's like you gotta find time to do your own thing. And I think I find a lot of that time out on the golf course.
Oh, okay. Yeah, which is what you do essentially every weekend, I'm assuming?
I mean, I try and golf when I can. If I can golf one time during the week, one time on the weekend, I'm fine. I'm happy.
Is that your kind of clarity? You're just like, you're like letting go of stuff. Like for me, it's biking, for you, it's kind of golfing.
It's the same thing. That's exactly, like I said, I worked at that country club growing up, and on Mondays we would get to go out and play. And I'm telling you, I mean, I don't know. I feel like that was probably the biggest release of stress or pressure or anything, is going out there on Mondays, even if I'm playing by myself or if I'm playing with coworkers or people that, friends.
Yeah, sure.
It's just, you forget about everything. You don't worry about the rest of the world.
Even if you're playing bad or you're having a...
Hey, if you're playing bad, that's better, because then you're definitely not thinking about anything else.
That's a good point.
Yeah, but if you're playing good, you're pumped about that too. It's kind of a win-win situation. If you're out there, you're relaxed, and it's 2 to 4 hours, depending on how many holes you're playing, and nobody bothers you. It's great.
That's awesome. So aside from the daily routines and kind of those stuff and dealing with stress, is there a personal growth skill that you're currently working on to develop, something that you're trying to better yourself? What are you looking on to improve? How are you developing personally? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I hear you. I think just knowledge in general. I think, like I said, you gotta be learning every day. And I think the newest term that I've heard is woke. You gotta be woke. So you gotta understand the real world. Like you have to know yourself.
Yep.
You have to be comfortable in yourself, and then once you can kind of get a good grasp of that, you can start understanding how other people feel too.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think it's like, it's the societal view of how do people truly feel about certain things, or how does this really affect other people at a people or person-to-person level. It's not right. I'm not making a business decision here, but I'm making a people decision here.
Sure. How is it going to impact my relationship or whatever?
Yeah, or somebody else's relationship, even if I'm not even a part of it. I mean, it's like simple things that you just have to understand what goes on in somebody else's head. Sure. And when you're talking to somebody, it's like, they say, 90% of communication is nonverbal. Yeah. Something crazy
it's
like
really
that.
High.
And I think that's huge, because you're thinking about what people say isn't nearly as important as how what they say makes you feel.
Yeah. Well, and their body language and all that kind of stuff, and how they're like, where they're looking.
Yeah. You listen with your ears, but you hear people with your eyes or with your tone. I mean, there's so much more going on, and I don't know, like if somebody says something that makes me feel a kind of an uncomfortable way, I'm going to be uncomfortable regardless of what words they did. Sure. But vice versa, if I say something weird, I mean, I could say it and smile, and somebody's probably going to smile back and not really what, Yeah,
they're not going to get it.
Yeah, so I don't know, it's the delivery, but it's also...
I was curious too, going back to, you're saying after you know yourself, then you should get to know your surroundings, and you have to be aware of those. How did you figure out who you are? Like, how did you really know yourself and get to know personally who you are? Because I've had a couple friends and other people ask me, I don't know what I want to do. I don't know where my passions are. I don't know how to find who I am.
That's a deep question for me, because Growing up with my brother, we didn't really have a strong father figure in the house. So we kind of had to develop our own ideas of what it is to become a man, or what it is to.
Sure. So your brother is a really big influence?
Yeah, I mean, I like to think I was a bigger influence on him, but no, we play off each other's strengths really well. I mean, he's always been very school smart, very, open to people. He's like just this cheerful guy, kind of like people are drawn to his happiness or his like ability to just.
Oh yeah, he walks in a room, everyone starts smiling.
And he's, you know what? And another thing that I think is important is just your ability to be vulnerable sometimes.
Oh yeah, it's a good one.
And that's something that I think I've learned from Justin is just like, I mean, the more you really kind of expose yourself, that's being true to yourself at the same time. And other people hear that, they see that, and then they do the same thing. And that's how you can communicate at a much deeper level.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
But what was your original question here? I feel like
no, it's all good. You want to? How did you figure out who you were? So your brother's a big influence in finding yourself out.
Yeah, I mean, I probably figured that one out on the golf course too.
That's a good one.
Yeah, you battle throughout school on social aspects or just grades or the sports teams that you're playing on. But
did you try a lot of new stuff when you're in high school and kind of like did you try a bunch of new things? And you, like you said, you don't like schedule, so I'm assuming it was pretty chaotic and you're just doing everything to figure out what you liked and didn't like.
Well, my mom would drive us to school every day, which is a pain. Now that I know how difficult it is to wake up in the morning and do all these things, it's like, man, if I had to take 2 kids to school in the morning and do everything that I do now, God, that'd be tough. But I think, I tried a lot of different sports. I tried a lot of different things, and I failed at a lot of them. I mean, I remember another golf story. My freshman year, I had golfed for 1 year prior to this. I started golfing in 8th grade.
Okay.
And then freshman year, I had random golf clubs in my basement, have no idea where they were from. And the coach was like, all right, bring, a pitching wedge, a 7-iron, and a driver. And Braemar Golf Dome is where we do this. And I show up. I hit the golf balls. Apparently, I did all right the first time, so he invited me to play in the next round of tryouts, which is at Dwan Golf Course over here. And you play 18 holes, and I think par on 18 holes is a 68. So a 68 is considered
average, or the
not. I mean, above average. That's like you played the course and you played really well.
Yeah.
If you're shooting in the 70s, you probably make the team. If you're shooting in the 80s, you got a chance.
Okay.
And I shot 108. I was stoked. I had no idea. I never played 18 holes. I was like, you know what? I shot 108. I feel great. I hand the coach my card. He's like, you don't have to come back tomorrow. I'm like, nailed it. I asked my buddy next. He's like, what'd you shoot? He's like, well, I shot an 82. I'm like, did you make it? He's like, yeah, I was told to come back tomorrow. And I'm like, well, I was told not to. Oh, I get it.
You had no idea.
Had no idea. I mean, but I don't know. I stuck with the game, and I play a lot now.
That's
better
awesome.
than that. But I never did try out for the team again. I actually started running track in the springtime, so.
Okay.
Wish I would have, but.
Are you in any teams now, or do you just do it for fun, for golf?
I play in a lot of tournaments, a lot of charity events.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, but I don't know. I'd like to, join a club someday, and I think I think back to, I mean, I don't know. I met so many people working at that golf course that have helped me throughout my career.
Yeah.
I mean,
you want to give back, and you want to.
Yeah, I'd love to do stuff that people have done for me for them. I mean, a lot, right? I guess when I was going through school after my first 2 years of college at Normandale, I saved up a decent amount of money from bartending, but I didn't have enough to go somewhere else to school necessarily. I actually ended up trying for the Bloomington Fire Department. Takes about 8 months to get on there after all the vigorous tests and trials that you go through.
I forgot you did that.
Yeah, all sorts of stuff. I mean, you sit down with a psychologist to make sure that you're mentally sound, all sorts of stuff. And after finally getting accepted onto the fire department, about a week later, I got a letter from St. Thomas saying that I could maybe go there. They gave me the acceptance letter and how much money they would give me.
Right.
And it was still a lot.
Yeah.
But I talked to some of the members at Minnesota Valley. One guy that I barely even knew, he comes over to me, he's talking to me at the bar. He's a St. Thomas alumni. And he was like, well, what's the difference in the cost from, 1 year or 1 semester at Normandale and 1 semester here based on these scholarships and everything? And I told him, and he's like, well, how about I split that with you? I'm like, what? What do you mean? He's like, well, if I split
Wow.
that with you, would that convince you to just go already? Because,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
I see a lot in you, and I think it's time to, you know, keep moving forward instead of, you know, fire department's great and all, but you can always go back to that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I talked to the chief of the fire department, and he's like, yeah, dude, if you have the opportunity to finish your degree and that's what you want to do, you need to do that. And I'll have a spot open for you here if you ever want to come back.
That's crazy.
Makes the decision pretty easy, right?
Yeah. I like that a lot. That's really cool.
Yeah, and that's just, I mean, I wouldn't even call that a random act of kindness. That's so much more than that. And
Yeah, well, I mean, it's still a random act of kindness. It's just you value it way more than.
I mean, yeah, that's life altering for me and very little of an impact. I mean, he changed my life a hell of a lot more than he took away from his own.
Sure.
And it's like, I'd love to be able to do that for somebody else someday too.
Well, I'm sure, honestly, you probably already have, just in different ways, you know, ways you wouldn't even have thought of.
You give me too much credit. I'd love to think so. I mean, that's an awesome idea, right?
Yeah. So I know too, let's go back to talk a little bit about your other passions outside of golf. I know for a long time you were into the longboard scene. I know you do fantasy football, you do other stuff like that.
Yeah, I love that stuff. And I think, you know, as I think about this stuff more, I feel like a lot of these things it's who you're with. I mean, I love longboarding. I love who I would longboard with or who I still do longboard with. And it's like you're trying something new. You're doing something maybe dangerous. Who knows? And I don't know. Again, you're just kind of escaping. I mean, these are what hobbies are for. To move. I don't know. It's like it's such an important time. People look at it as, what are these guys doing, wasting their time doing this? But I think it's important to do these things.
Yeah, because like one person could get that same kind of escape, you know, going out for a run in the morning for 5 miles.
Yeah.
But you and me, I would never be able to do that.
No, I try it. But then fantasy football, it's like, you know, if you're doing it with people like friends or your office, it's like the camaraderie behind it is so much fun. You know, people are you know, talking smack
little
or just
rivalry,
like
whatever,
excited about one thing or another. But back to spreading happiness. It's like, even if you're upset about something, you're kind of laughing about it. You know, nobody's too upset.
Yeah, it's all
like,
fun.
Little competition is always fun. I mean, it just when people have I mean, you put $20 down. People have something. It could be $5 down. It doesn't matter what the dollar amount. It's more just, you know, somebody's kind of committed to wanting to win it. They get that competitive edge, and it's fun to see people fired up. You know.
That's awesome. I like that.
Yeah.
Do you have any sort of goals that you're looking at in the future to obtain, or any sort of like, you know, stuff that you're hoping to get? Or because I know you've accomplished a lot that you've already envisioned yourself doing way back, like 5 years ago or 3 years ago or whatever. You're kind of living what you wanted to do. Where do you want to go from here?
Yeah, hopefully forward, right? I want to.
That's
I don't know.
good. Well,
what is forward?
Yeah.
God, I want a lot. I mean, I want a lot. I want to do a lot. I want to go a lot of places. I'm not somebody who got to travel very much so far in my life.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah, and I think it's important to learn new cultures. I want to go to Europe. I want to go to Asia. I want to go to Africa. I mean, I just want to go learn these cultures because I mean, the United States is so different than so many places around the world. I mean, our values are totally upside down compared to other places.
Or maybe right side up.
Right side up. I'm not, you know, good, bad, or the other. You know, I don't know, but I would love to learn. I'd love to find out, you know, there's so many different opinions out there, people. And I think that's, you know, if you get the chance to go out and interview people at different countries, that's going to be awesome for you. And I want to see that. I want to hear that.
Yeah, you want to live that.
Yeah, dude, because I don't know. I hear all these stories about, you know, Denmark's the happiest place in the world, and their average income is like $40,000 a year or something. It's like, how can that possibly be from like a standpoint of, you know, the U.S. If you're not making $100,000, you're not successful or whatever you know, there's just so much more pressure in being wealthy and, you know, having the big house versus a lot of places in the world are way happier. And it has nothing to do with monetary anything. Yeah,
which is what I think the U.S. gets so caught up in, is this materialistic value of everything. You know, we need to have stuff. We need to have all of these things, and then we'll be successful.
Yeah, and it's kind of crazy when you think about it, but at the same time, I think our generation is kind of the people that are starting to change that, thanks to the previous generation, as, you know, we've learned from them. But more directly.
I'm talking to someone who was talking about getting a Rolex a couple months ago.
Fake Rolex. I don't know. That's a goal someday too. It's a very bad goal to have because I don't think anybody should ever spend more than $200 on a watch. But
do you want to have any sort of materialistic stuff? Like, because I know I do to an extent. You know, you want to look nice.
Yeah.
You want to, but
yeah, I mean, you want to present, and you don't need a Rolex for what I'm talking about here. But you want to present yourself in a professional way. You want to be taken seriously.
Right.
And
well, you just bought a brand new Jeep too, which is pretty sweet.
Yeah, and that was a dream of mine too, and to be able to, I kind of justified that because I paid off all of my college debt in the first 6 months, which was one of the biggest accomplishments I've ever had, getting a job right out of college, doing something I love. And I lived at home for a little bit because I wanted a Jeep. Well, not to mention my old Jeep was falling apart, but
it still ran.
It still ran until it doesn't now. Maybe it does. Who knows? But yeah, that was a goal. And sometimes you have to jump on stuff like that. Could I have spent that money differently? Absolutely. I mean, but I don't have regrets. I mean, I pride myself on not having regrets because it's just not worth it. I've made mistakes, but I wouldn't say that I would go back and change anything. Because
so you don't believe in having a regret?
I don't believe in regrets because I think that if you truly regret something, then you're not satisfied with where you're not taking. You don't feel those accomplishments, the rest of them, because even you change one thing and they say the whole time period or whatever, you're going to change more than one thing. So if you didn't do something that maybe you did do, or if you did do something that maybe you didn't do at the time,
sure,
it alters the whole course that you're on. And I think you have to appreciate where you are no matter where you are, because if you're here, you did something right. And it's a little thing. If you regret something, it's a little thing. Pass it on. Do something better in the future, something you can control.
Oh yeah, no doubt. Do you have any sort of tips for kind of not getting caught up in all the cycles of structure? Like you were talking about how you like to live life very spontaneous, very non-structured. How do you keep your life? Are you still focused on those like moments and living in the present, or do you kind of get lost in everything kind of just going, and then it's already Friday or it's already
I think you got to have a balance. I try and keep a balance between being open-minded but still being grounded.
Okay.
Like I said, knowing yourself is very important, and knowing your morals, knowing where you stand on big topics, but also being open and intelligent enough to carry out conversations with other people that might not agree with you.
Oh, yeah.
Or just to learn about topics that you don't know about. And I think by doing that, you can...
That's something I struggle with. I'm very... I'm very set in my own head, and if someone tells me differently, it's very hard for me to accept that sometimes.
Yeah.
But
yeah, and it's like that. But I think, you don't always have to be right. Nobody has to be right all the time.
Yeah.
Boring life would be if you were right every time you said anything.
And I mean, what is right or wrong? We could go into that whole conversation.
It's an opinion. Yeah, exactly. And gosh, the more you communicate with other people, the more you realize that, because you're trying to accomplish one thing and you do it, but the guy next to you is like, who cares?
That doesn't mean anything to me.
To him, but it's like, in your own world, you do have to follow your own dreams. But I think you're going to get to your dreams a lot faster if you're hearing other people out too. Yeah.
Would you say you kind of starting now versus when you were in college and high school, do you say you have a better work ethic and you have a better understanding of how to get things done, prioritize things, or were you more motivated earlier before you had what you dreamt of having?
I mean, I don't have what I've dreamt of having yet, but
you've made a lot of progress.
Yeah, but I think you got to stay ambitious. You always have to want more, and I don't think that's a greedy thing. I think it's more of you don't want to settle in anything you ever do, because why should you?
Okay. But you don't want to, if you have a goal and you achieve it, you don't you just want to keep moving on and find the next one, right?
Yeah,
away?
It's a building block. You set a goal, you achieve it, you set another goal, you achieve it. Just, or if you have the same goal, you heighten it. It's like, I want to make $1 million by the time I'm 40.
Sure.
Great. Why? What are you going to do with that million? I mean, goals are so much deeper than just like, I want to do this. Okay, but why do you want to do that? What's the deeper meaning here? And if you can accomplish, you think about that. I want $1 million by I'm 40. Okay, why do you want that? Because I think it's going to enable me to do all these other things. Okay, what other things do you want to do? You go through all those things. Why do you want to do them? And there's just, you kind of dig deeper into who you are, what you're trying to achieve.
Right.
Oftentimes it's not what the original goal is. So I guess, you got to set goals. You got to break through those goals because they're not barriers. They're not supposed to hold you back.
That's a weird thought because I like to, when I set goals, I like to kind of not, after I achieve something, I like to look at it and be like, wow, like, look what I've done, look what I've accomplished. And I kind of sit in it for a little bit because it feels good. But I do think it's a good thing to always continuously keep moving. But I like to enjoy it, once I've accomplished it and kind of like look at it and just admire it for a little bit.
Yeah, you got to celebrate the little wins, no matter how little they are. But at the same time, you cannot lose focus on the big ones.
That's true. That's a good point.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's really important to stay focused, stay ambitious. When you ask me, do I feel like I'm working harder now or if I've gotten lazy or whatever you want to call it, I think that I work harder every day.
Okay.
And I think every day that I go to work, I try and work harder. Every time I do anything, I play golf, I want to beat the last score I had. I mean, it's just constant improvement, constant growth, constant learning. I mean, those are the things that keep us moving forward. And if we're not moving forward, I don't know. I don't want to waste my time. I don't want to waste somebody else's time.
Yeah, no doubt. I'm the same way. I don't want to just be living in a state of like not having any sort of self-development or even like helping others or any sort of, I want to always be doing better and doing other things for other people or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, whatever it is. It's just do something.
Yeah.
And you want something, find a way to do it. Or if you can't think of anything, if you're like, man, I am so set in my ways, I'm happy, I don't need anything. Okay, ask somebody that you care about, what do they want? Can you do anything to help them? I mean, it's like there's nobody. I don't believe in the term bored. I don't think anybody should ever be bored.
I like that.
I can't think of a single time that I've ever been bored because, I mean, I even like you and your brother.
Yeah.
I can't imagine you guys being bored. If you're not doing something, you're out in the garage working on bikes or something, whether it's your bike, somebody else's bike. I mean, who cares? It's just you're doing something. You're not necessarily helping yourself, but you're helping somebody else, and you're staying active. Maybe you're learning a new skill. I mean, whatever it may be.
That's funny. Someone dropped off a bike earlier today that we got to work on this weekend.
Yeah, and that's awesome. It's just, and I'm sure it's just you're doing it to help somebody else out.
Yeah, no doubt.
Sure, it takes time, but it's doing something you love to help somebody else do something they love.
Exactly. And I mean, we love riding bikes too. So like, why wouldn't we help someone else go ride their bike,
Yeah.
That's awesome. Do you have any, like, I know we're wrapping up a little bit. I think we've kind of talked. We've got a lot of good stuff we went through on this podcast. Is there any kind of last minute thoughts or anything you want to talk about real quick? Any last ideas you want to give to the world?
I had a talk with one of my best friends, Andre, last weekend. We were just sitting on the porch, and we actually had a long discussion on the difference between a porch, a balcony, or a deck, and all these things. But that's besides the point. We just started talking about, he's got a dream. He'd love to at least try to play in the NFL, but it's maybe in his opinion too late. Or something. I mean, there's just not a lot of practicality behind that. And I'm thinking, in what situation could you do something like that? And, we're trying to piece it together. Like, if I could afford not to work for a year or 2 years and have a professional trainer train me in these things so that I'm physically able to, I've got the motivation. That's not the problem. But some people have access to that and some people don't. And I think we would probably have a lot better football teams if there was a program for that or something.
Right. I think it's really good to be, it's not a matter of fact of having the resources to do something, but I think it's being resourceful for what you have.
And tied to the drive. But I think, if you look at that on a bigger scale, it's like there's probably a lot more going on than that. I mean, people sure want to go to the NFL or NBA or something, but there's probably people that want to go to the moon. People that want to do huge things to make our society grow like that. I mean, if we had 10,000 students coming out of college that literally were paid to focus on something that they love, and the thing that they love is trying to get to Mars or something like that. I mean, something huge.
That they really will,
If they got paid and were funded to do this, which is what they love to do for 20 years, I bet you 20 years from now, easy, we'd have somebody on Mars, we'd have somebody on the moon, we'd do these things.
With kids with those work ethics, though. What about people who would go through that and then just, sit on the couch and play video games for 6 hours or eat a bag of chips kind of thing? I hear
you, but I have a hard time thinking that the majority of people would do that, because I think if our education system was more tied to following passions or following talents or following things that you love or that you're just good at, people don't get discouraged. I mean, I still think I was better at quick math in elementary school. Those time tests.
Oh, you know
what I'm talking about?
The multiplication sheets and the plus and minus.
I could do math in 20 seconds and solve 20 different problems. Could I do that today? Not a chance. Why is that? I have no idea. But that's such a great, like, I mean, things like that. You learn all your base skills in those grades. But then all of a sudden you go to high school. Yeah, I think, people act stupid in high school. But at the same time, I think people get discouraged because maybe calculus isn't their best subject, or maybe math isn't their best subject. Maybe they have a hard time spelling or reading. And we value those things so high that if you get a D in English class, you call in yourself an idiot, or you think, I'm not smart enough, I'm not good enough for this, and that drives people into the ground. Right? Whether that's a source of, depression, or just people thinking that they're not worth what they maybe are worth because they have other talents, but they're not seen as important. I mean, you could be a world-class chef in ninth grade and nobody would know it because you don't know how to spell the word chef or something.
That's a very good point. Like, look at Eminem, that famous rapper.
Yeah.
Like, he did really bad in all the other subjects, but he was so driven in himself, with words and rhyming and all that stuff.
And now he's lyrically probably the best to ever rap, right?
Yeah.
So it's I just think if people feel more fulfilled in those younger ages, they're going to be happier and they're going to be better at whatever that is that they're good at. So if we could function, or if we could kind of, I don't know, change something, I don't have the answers. I just have an idea for it. But if people are doing something that they love or that they're good at, they're going to be better at it.
Well, I got an idea. I don't know if I told you about this, but I really want to get into public speaking in schools and with the youth and all that stuff, because I think that's what I want to be doing. I want to influence these younger people.
I think you'd be great at that, yeah.
Yeah, but I need to figure out where to go. How do I get into
that comes down to your drive. Figure it out. Go in there, talk to the principal. They're probably going to scan you, make sure you're not carrying anything. I mean, it's kind of crazy how intense schools are, but who knows, maybe it's for the good, maybe it's for the bad. I don't know.
Yeah, there's been a lot of shootings in the past year.
There's been a lot of just bad, just nasty things, but
which is insane because it wasn't like that, 50 years ago.
And we can't solve that. I don't know. I think a lot of it could be social media pressure built up from social anxiety, things like that.
Oh, yeah.
But I think, again,
and it's the need for attention, too. Attention is huge.
But I think it goes back to, like, if you're in school and you're doing something that you're good at, you're doing great at it, you're getting that recognition, you have that self-fulfillment, you're going to carry it forward and you're going to do it.
Yeah.
And you're not going to feel bad because you don't, do these other basic things that you don't do that great, but you do something that you are great at.
Right.
And I feel like, if you do that, you're moving somewhere, regardless of if it's somewhere where you're going to make $150,000 a year, or if you're going to make $20,000 a year. It's just like, focus on something. If you love it, you're going to make a living doing it.
Yeah, that's where you're going to find the most value out of yourself. That's where you're going to be the happiest. That's where you're going to make everyone else around you the happiest.
Yeah, and if you can, figure your finances and stuff out at a young age, you can do those things. But I think that's, again, the separation of wealth in our society is huge, and I'm trying to look at this from not just a geographical standpoint, but from like an age standpoint. I mean, people by the time they're 80 have $1 million, and especially our generation with inflation, yada yada yada. If you don't have $1 million by the time you're 80, something got messed up in between.
Sure.
That maybe could have been prevented, maybe it couldn't, but if you're learning these basic skills at a young age, hopefully you'll be all right.
Yeah.
But the difference between $100,000 when you're 80 and $100,000 right now when you're in your 20s is just enormous.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
So like when I was talking to Andre about like the whole figuring out how to follow a dream when you can't necessarily afford to follow the dream. Geez, wouldn't it be great if you could write yourself a check from like, when I'm 80, I don't need 100,000, but right now I do. So it'd be great to be able to give yourself that, but we can't do that. It's impossible. But what we can do is you go ahead.
I don't want to interrupt. You finish your thought.
Well, I was just going to say we can do that for our next generation. And I'm not saying create a bunch of entitled brats out there just giving money when they're super young. But I'm saying if people learn the right things starting off, and I could be totally insane for thinking this, but and they had the ability to do them, God, I just feel like we would be a happier, more productive society as a whole.
Oh, I totally agree. I think that there have to be a lot of kinks worked out because, there's so many different scenarios and different people and different personalities and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But I totally think that would be an idealistic world, like that would be...
Right. Far-fetched maybe, but it would be great. And it's like, it goes back to how do people learn their true morals? And
exactly.
How do people ground themselves? It's different in every house.
But going back to what you were saying about writing yourself a check, I totally disagree with that. I have a check that I wrote to myself that's sitting in my mirror that I look at every day that I wrote for $50,000. So
Hell yeah. But you haven't cashed it yet.
No, but I will.
Hell yeah. And that's, I remember when you did that, dude. I thought that was awesome. I've never heard of anybody else doing it, and it's great.
Yeah.
But, I mean, geez. I just think that we could do so much if we had, you know, just something to keep us on track like that.
Well, I think we'll get there eventually. I mean, maybe at one point when our society or our nation reaches a certain point, then we'll come to a realization. But it takes a lot for people to change and for systems to change. You know, it's just
and there's always going to be people stuck in their ways. There's always going to be negativity. People are human. I mean, that's part of us.
Exactly.
We're not happy all the time. We'd like to be, but we get.
I don't think it's a good thing to be healthy or happy all the time.
No,
either.
You have to have battles with yourself, with other people. I mean, you have to. That's how you develop your morals, right? I mean, if you never argue with somebody about something, you'll never really develop your own true opinion on it.
No doubt.
Yeah, and if you lose the argument, maybe you feel the other way now. But if you win the argument, you feel better about your stance. It's just one way or another. It's good to have these conflicts. I mean, I don't know. It's probably why politics is a thing now, I guess, now that I think about it. But I don't know. That'll get us on all sorts of other topics.
Yeah, maybe we should steer away from those. Cool, man. Well, I think this is really awesome. I'm really stoked that you got to come out and we could sit down and have this conversation. I think a lot of people are going to like this, and I'm amped.
Yeah, dude. I love being here. I'm happy you asked me to do this. And
well, of course. How could I not?
I don't know. Somebody else probably has a better opinion on something.
Well, I'll interview them next week.
Oh, perfect. I'll listen.
Cool, man. All right. Well, I want to thank you guys for listening. As always, share it with your friends. If you thought this was cool, you know, give it a thumbs up or give it a like, drop a comment. I'm curious to see, what do you want to hear next? I really want to hear feedback. You know, what can I do differently? What can I do better? You know, who do you want to hear? Or is there someone that I should interview next? Or even if one of you guys want to be interviewed, I would totally be down to sit down with someone who listens and talk to them. I think that'd be really cool. But, you could say your farewells.
All right. Thanks, Ian. Appreciate it.
Of course. Take it easy, everyone, and make today the best day of your life.